Hi, Gay. Hi, can you hear me?
Yes.
Great. It's nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you. Thank you for having me.
Thank you so much. And we've got Jenny is on the call already as well, and she is our office manager for Nola Family Magazine.
Cool.
You know,
Hi, Jenny.
we got about 35 camps signed up to this.
Great.
And we've got probably at least, I know because Jenny's told me about two more. We've got so far about half a dozen that said they couldn't make it, but they'd like the recording at the end.
Excellent.
So, but anyway, so yeah. I think we did, I don't know if I told you, but Melissa Connor obviously is going to be on this call.
Yes, I know Melissa.
The one that actually gave me your contact information. I'm going to text her right now and let her know that we're here. And then we also have Diane Peterson, Dr. Peterson. She's a general pediatrician with Oxner. And she directs the children's, the hospital for children and the Healthy Schools program. So,
oh, good.
And then our editor, Trevor, will also be on. I'm going to text her and tell her to get in right now as well. So how are you doing?
Doing great. Keeping busy.
Yeah. So I know, and I think you're going to speak about this, about the out of school workers being able to, as far as considered essential and getting early on the vaccine list. And that's
yes.
Your association is doing, right?
We've really been working at the federal and the state level with folks to try to help make sure that essential workers include our camp employees, because that is super important. We call it camp, we believe it's camp, but for many people it's childcare.
Right.
Us working parents rely on something, some way to entertain and keep our kids occupied when they're not in school, and camp is that place.
You're absolutely right. Do you know how's that going so far?
Well, I think that PDF that I sent you
Yeah.
is the latest information we have on that. We've really tried to partner with a number of different groups, including the Y and the JCC.
And they're both going to be on this call. The local YMCA and the JCC are both registered for this call too.
Good. Because the more voices that come together, the more powerful that message is. That we want those folks in Washington to know that how important that is.
Yeah. Hi, Melissa.
Hi, everybody. How are you?
Thank you so much for lending your expertise to this.
For sure. I'm excited. Hey, Gay.
How are you this morning?
I was telling Gay
good to see you.
Before you got on that we've got so far about 35 camps registered and about half a dozen that said they can't make it, but they want the recording, have already requested it. So
great. That's so great. That's so great.
Yeah, it is.
Way to go. Well, I'm reading my most recent edition of ACA Gay. We got our director's retreat on Saturday, and we're going virtual. Good. So just such a bummer, but there's 30 of us, and I've never done a Zoom call for 8 hours with 30 people.
Well, I have now, and it's challenging. I think you have to incorporate breaks in there. Definitely. Even if it's 5 minutes to get up, walk around your area, bend and try to touch your toes or something. You just got to have a little movement in there.
Yes, for sure. How's the Nola family world?
It's good. I mean, it's chugging along. You know what I mean? It's like definitely been affected by all of this, but I mean, we started doing some new stuff like open house video tours and stuff for schools, which has really helped a lot as well, helped schools out.
That's cool.
Way to go.
Yeah, we started that this past summer. So that's good. But anyway. And I just emailed Dr. Peterson too to let her know that we're all in here just a few minutes early if she wants to join us.
Perfect. I think I'm going to turn these lights off behind me. They're a little obnoxious.
So Melissa, I didn't see you. I saw that recording of that call you sent me. Thank you so much. And I watched it all, but I didn't see you on it. Were you there? You just weren't speaking?
No, I spoke a lot. Maybe I didn't send you the right one. I'll have to go back and look at it. She just sent the link saying that was the recording, but no, we spoke a lot.
That's weird. Maybe I got a different recording.
I'm going to go back and look.
Because it was like 47 minutes long.
Yeah, that's about right.
Huh.
It was from Rachel, wasn't it?
I think so. I mean, I can't be losing my mind. I mean, I could be. That's very possible. So. That's Trevor Wisdom. She's our
Trevor,
editor.
You're muted.
Sorry. So we have Melissa Connor, Trevor.
Hello.
And she's the president of Kid Cam Camps. I've talked to you about them before.
Well, I interviewed her last summer for her sponsored article.
Right.
Pleasure to see you in person, Melissa.
Hi, how are you?
Good. I've got a little frog in my throat. I apologize in advance.
And Gabe Bruner, she's the membership director for the Central Region of the American Camp Association.
Morning.
So,
Morning. I was checking out your website yesterday. Really great resource. I spent about an hour on there.
Oh, good, good. 14,000 pages. So,
well, I didn't quite go that far, but yeah, it was very interesting. What wasn't behind the wall, I really enjoyed reading. So thank you for having that as a resource for us.
no problem. And I'm actually just realized it's already started recording, so I'm going to pause the recording for now.
Screen share. I don't have a PowerPoint or anything fancy along that lines, but I just sometimes visuals and numbers. Do you know if that's possible?
Well, we activated that. We did activate that also recording for this call. And also if you open up the chat, there should be a file tab there that I know that Gabe from the American Camp Association shared some information. And so we will be sharing like links, and we can share documents there as well with everybody. If you've got more information and we can't share that here, when we we'll send out a email with the recording to everybody. And we can also attach links and documents to that follow-up email as well. So try to give everybody as much information as they can. And like I said, I think before you came on, we have about 35 camps, I think, registered for this call. And we had at least, before this call started, probably about half a dozen camps that said they wanted to attend but couldn't and have asked for the recording afterwards. So I think there's going to be, a lot of great information that we're going to be sharing in here. So we've got about 24 people on the call already. I'm going to keep an eye on that and just admit people as they come in. But let's go ahead and get started for time's sake. For those of you that don't know me, my name is Ann Herron, and I'm the publisher of Nola Family Magazine, which is the local parenting magazine and resource in the New Orleans area. We've worked with camps for a long time. We print a special summer camp issue every March in New Orleans, and have usually about 160 camp camps and information in that guide. We thought it was really important this year, going into the camp season, to talk to camp directors, give them an opportunity to talk to each other, find out what they're doing. I mean, communication is really important. Sharing of ideas is important. We have Dr. Diana Peterson with us. She's a general pediatrician with Oxnard Hospital for Children. And as well, she's the medical director of Oxnard's school nurse program and the Healthy Schools program, right? And we have Gabe Bruner. She's the membership manager for the Central Region of the American Camp Association. And she has some great information and can talk about what the Camp Association is doing as well, to actively help camps with the COVID situation. And then Melissa Connor, who I'm sure a lot of you know, she's the president of Kid Cam Camps. And a personal friend of mine, but she, Kid Cam has been a leader, I'd say, in the industry, especially locally last year with Auctioner, being the camp that Auctioner used for their first responders to handle childcare and to leading camp. And I know that she's done a lot of, information sharing as well, which is what we're here and what we're doing right now. So for anybody that is interested, before we get to, with Dr. Peterson and Gay Bruner and Melissa Connor, it would be great if everybody could just, unmute themselves and just give a quick introduction of who you are and where you're with, just so we know who's on the call.
Hi, I'll start out. I'm Trevor Wisdom. I'm managing editor of Nola Family. I'm part of Anne's team. I'm a long-term journalist and I'm a native New Orleanian. I'm also a mom, even though my daughter's now grown. She's a school teacher, fourth grade teacher in a Jefferson Parish public school. So I really understand kind of from that position where so many of y'all are coming from, thinking about the safety of your respective teams. How do you keep yourselves safe? How do you keep your counselors safe? What are the kids going to be bringing in aside from the normal, possible chicken pox or something like that? Right. So I'm very aware of everything from a medical standpoint. I keep abreast of everything as well as trends. I myself was a long-term camper, both day camp as well as sleepaway summer camps until the age of 15. So I am a vowed lover of camps, and I recognize all of the work that goes behind that. Also know that I'm always here to work with y'all on any articles. I love quotes. I will share my email with you. And anything you ever want to share, tell me about, or have questions on, I love to write about it. So thank you for that.
Right. If everybody could just, we can just go through the room here real quickly and just say who you are and where you're with. That would be great.
Hi, I'm Candy Patterson. Oh, sorry, Kelly. Yeah, I'm Candy Patterson. I'm with Kid Cam Camps, Candy Patterson. I'm the VP of Operations.
Good morning. I'm Chris Blampton, the camp director at the Academy of the Sacred Heart.
Hi, Chris.
I'm Kelly Carell. I am the Kid Cam in the Baton Rouge area. Melissa invited me to join the call. I appreciate y'all letting me jump in.
Absolutely. Thank you for joining us.
Good morning. My name is Sorry. Hi. Good morning. My name is Alex Smith. I'm from Isidore Newman School. I'm the director of Newman Plus and oversee the summer programs here. Thank you so much for hosting this, Anne and the panel. Really appreciate it.
Thank you so much for joining.
I'm Kirsty Schultz. I'm the co-owner of Vamonos Nola.
Hi, Kirsty.
Hey, great.
Hi, I'm Dana Reed. I'm the executive director of Upturn Arts.
Hi, Dana.
Hey, Dana. This is Nancy Dahl. I'm with Kirsty, co-owner of Vamonos Nola.
Great.
Hi, I'm Wendy Goldberg, the Associate Director at the CPC.
I'm Ellen Balkin. I'm the Director of Education at the Ogden Museum of Southern Art.
Great, thank you. I think, Wendy, we missed you. You're on
I'm Wendy Goldberg. I am the Associate Director at the Jewish Community Center.
Great, thanks for joining us.
And I'll tag Wendy. I'm also at the JCC Uptown, Rachel Zoller.
Hi, Rachel.
Hi, folks. I'm Cherie Hansen. I own Culinary Kids up in Mandeville on the North Shore and have been teaching camps and running things for over 35 years in other cities and states and such as a career educator.
Great. Thanks, Cherie.
Hey, I'm Sarah Solto with Breck Recreation in Baton Rouge. Jeb was going to be here, but he had another meeting, so I'm kind of standing in today.
Great. Thanks for joining us.
Hi, everybody. I'm Jenny Ziegler. I'm the office manager at Nola Family Magazine.
Jenny.
Hey, y'all. I'm Susan Gislison. I'm the director of Country Day Creative Arts. Thank you so much for putting this together. I look forward to hearing what everyone has to say.
Absolutely. Thanks for joining us, Susan.
Hi, I'm Aaliyah. I'm the Community Engagement Associate at Electric Girls.
Oh, great. Nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you. Congratulations on your new director.
Thank you.
Great. Is that, do we have anybody else hanging out there right now? I know there's a few people on the call, but perhaps they,
Yes, me. I'm Angel Chung-Cutnow. I'm with the New Orleans Boulder Lounge.
Nice to meet you. Like your hat.
Hi, I'm Anastasia Scott. I'm the Director of Educational Programming at Herman Grima and Gallier Historic Houses.
Great. Nice to meet you.
Hey, I'm Michelle Mangum. I'm with Greater New Orleans STEM Initiative.
Hi, Michelle.
Hey everyone, my name is Kristen Renfro. I'm the advertising executive for Nola Family.
Okay, good. So I know we're going to have some more people. We've got about 27 people on the call right now, but we'll probably have some more joining us as we go along. But I definitely wanted to get started. I'd like to introduce myself to those that have just joined in the past few minutes. My name is Ann Heron. I'm publisher of Nola Family Magazine. We've brought this forum together on Zoom as a way to share information and to gain some knowledge. I'll tell you briefly who we have with us as far as being able to speak. Melissa Connor is the president and CEO of Kid Cam Camps and has a lot of experience and worked with Oxnard last year with their childcare for first responders and running their camps. Gabe Bruner is the membership manager for the Central Region of the American Camp Association, and they're doing some hard work right now, really helping camps out as far as COVID is concerned. And then Dr. Diana Peterson, who's a pediatrician and the head of the Healthy Schools program and the schools nurse program at Oxnard. So I would like to start with Dr. Peterson so she can talk to us a little bit about what's going on with with COVID, with the changes that we've seen and how that's going to probably look for everybody this summer. Dr. Peterson.
Good morning. Thank you guys for having me. I didn't really prepare anything formal. I thought we could just kind of keep it open. I'll give you guys an update on COVID and COVID in children, specifically in schools, which is where we have the most data from currently. And then if you guys have questions, feel free to unmute or put it in the chat or however you want to reach me, I'm fine. So don't worry about interrupting me. So since schools have opened, we have learned a lot about COVID transmission in children and adults. I think one of the most, listening to the list of current camps, y'all are mostly dealing with school-age children. You're not really catering to the little bitties and the teenagers, although you definitely might have staff that's functioning as a teenager or a college-age child, which I think is important to remember. But what we do know about COVID in schools is that the level of transmission within a school very closely mirrors community transmission. So if the levels in the community are high, which they currently are, you can expect more COVID in your school or camp. There's also been some very good studies that show that children are better protected from COVID in a school setting because they're not out and about, they're not going to large gatherings, things in schools and likely camps are very controlled. And through all of the reasons we can discuss why, but we work on social distancing, diligence for masking, keeping groups of children in their pods or cohorts. So all of those things are protective to children from COVID. And if you look at numbers, there can be a community-based number, and then you can look at the school number, and as children are back in school, the numbers will drop. That's demonstrated well. It happened after the Christmas break. It's happened after the Thanksgiving break, if you look at in-school numbers. So I think that's really important to remember. COVID tends to be spread in a school-based setting from an adult to a child, meaning the adult got COVID from some sort of recreational activity or being in close contact with people outside of their homes. They can then spread it to their classmates or, students within their classroom. There's very few, it happens, but it's not very common where children spread COVID to each other in a school or where a child spreads COVID upwards to a teacher. So I think that's really important to remember. If we look at COVID demographics, the highest group that's rising right now is the 18 through I think the 29-year-old. They are catching COVID the most. And if I remember my camp experience well, those are typically my college, the camp counselors. So kids that are coming home from college that need summer jobs, those are the kids and people that have the highest risk of getting COVID now. So try to remember that when you guys are planning your staff and education for your counselors, et cetera. I want to focus on two more things quickly. One is the new strain of the COVID virus. Viruses will change and viruses will mutate. This is well known. This is not something that actually surprised scientists about COVID. This is what viruses do. There's currently three new strains, and the one that's in the UK is actually the one that's found in our greater New Orleans region and in the United States. The two other strains are from Brazil and South Africa, and those have not been found to be in the United States currently. What we know about the new strain is it is unlikely to cause more severe illness in people. So your risk of severe outcome is not higher, and your risk of death is not higher, but it is more efficient at going in between people and spreading. Now, what does that mean for camps? As of right now, we don't have any CDC guidance of changing protocol as far as 15 minutes, 10 minutes, 6 feet. None of that has changed with the new variant, but I can anticipate that it could possibly change before May or June or when you guys start camp. So I would keep up to date on your CDC protocols and plans for that. And kind of the hot topic right now, which I've been spending my days and nights, is vaccines and vaccines for children. So as far as children go, they have done studies and ongoing studies in children and adolescents ranging from 12 to 16. Currently, the Pfizer vaccine is approved for 16 and up. The Moderna vaccine is approved for 18 and up. But keep in mind, healthy children and adolescents are not vaccine eligible right now. But that is approved age ranges for those two vaccines. There are studies right now to kind of bridge the gap. So between 12 and 16 and 12 and 18 in the two different vaccines. So that age group is in trial. And as we know, trials take a long time. So once that group gets out of trial, the next thought would be 8 to 12. And we are maybe anticipating starting that between March and April. So thinking about kids that are going into your camp, it's going to be unlikely that your campers will be vaccinated. You might have some adolescents or teenagers or college age students vaccinated, hopefully by early summer, but I wouldn't anticipate children coming into your camp vaccinated. And kind of the secondary point to that is right now there's no updated CDC guidance regarding changing quarantines or isolations or any of that for somebody who's been vaccinated. So again, I do think that's going to change as more and more people become vaccine eligible and receive both doses. But for now, if you have had both vaccines, it's not a free pass to not have to socially distance and not have to mask and not have to. Those are my whole deeper on any topics you guys feel applicable.
Does anybody have any questions? Candy?
Go ahead, Candy.
You can unmute yourself.
Hi, Doc. I do have a question. You said that the 12 to 16s are in a trial now. How large would that trial group be, and approximately how long is it anticipated that trial lasts?
They started this trial. I'm more familiar with the one ongoing at Ochsner, which is with the Pfizer trial, which is 12 through 16 right now. They started it, I think, late winter, and they were hoping to get 100 applicants. And I know we've gone above and beyond that number. As far as enrollees into the vaccine trial for that age group, I'm not exactly in the know on when it ends and all of that kind of stuff as far as data publication, but that's the one that's currently ongoing.
Okay. Thank you.
I had a quick question, Doctor. You were saying in elementary age kids that it's spread pretty much from adult to child, but then did you say that it's rare that COVID is spread from child to child?
It is uncommon that kids will spread it child to child in a school-based setting. So this is not something I would say where a sibling that you know is in close contact that shares a lot of time together in a home, but in a school-based setting, it's not common to find child-to-child spread within a school.
Okay, thank you so much. I appreciate it.
And that's for the young ones. That's not for your teenagers. So the younger ones, and usually when we say young, we mean under 10.
I see Rachel Zeller has raised her hand with a question. Rachel?
Yeah, thank you. I just wanted to ask, I know that that teachers are in the next tier. Do you know or have any sense if our summer camp staff would get priority over someone else as we start to hire those college age kids?
That is a good question. When I look through vaccine tiering, it's really saying teachers and school-based staff. That includes cafeteria workers, all of those people that function within a school. I haven't heard any mention of camp. So I think that would be something I could ask and try to clarify. But right now, I mean, when I look through the vaccine phases, I don't see camp specifically. Now, would they just lump that into teachers? I'm not sure.
Okay,
may be able to speak to that too, because
Yeah.
I think the ACA is in DC fighting pretty hard to get camp leaders and staff approved to be a piece of that, but it's a work in progress.
Yeah, I was going to ask Gay if she wanted to jump in and kind of speak to that real quickly. For those of you on the call, Gay Bruner is a membership manager for the Central region of the American Camp Association. Gay, do you want to speak to that?
Yes, and Anne, if you would put a link into that document.
Yes.
So the After School Alliance, along with the Boys and Girls Club, JCC, the YUSA, and ACA are working very hard at the federal and state level to get camp employees considered essential workers. Most of us are probably working parents, and whether we call it camp or whether we call it childcare or after school program, it is essential for us to be able to go to work and our children be cared for in a safe environment. And to be able to get vaccinations for our camp staff is really critical for us to be able to operate, whether it's an after school program, gymnastics camp, or regular camp in the summer. So there has been some movement at the federal level, and the After School Alliance has come out with a statement. You can read it there, stating that camp employees really are considered essential workers. So there's more to come on that, but we have a great relationship with the Biden transition team and now the regular Biden administration, and we hope to continue this dialogue until we see it in writing everywhere. We will be continuing to make sure that we are talking to the right people. And that really means also educating your local people, whoever is your permitting agency that you have a relationship with. You make sure that they have the most current information, and their supervisor and their supervisor, and all the way up to your governor's office, that everyone knows what's coming down the pike, and that everybody is on the same page. Super critical, important.
I just shared that PDF in our chat group. Just make sure everybody got it. But if you didn't, you can always email one of us and we can send it to you.
Thank you, Anne.
I just want to clarify one point that Susan was asking about children and spreading COVID. When I say that statement about children spreading COVID within a school, we are under the assumption that the child is masked and practicing as much social distancing as possible. So that's the kind of corollary to why we think children are not spreading it as frequently within a school-based setting. So I just wanted to make sure y'all are up to date on that.
Great. Does anybody else have any questions for Dr. Peterson?
Yes, Dr. Peterson, one of the most common questions we seem to get from our parents is how long do we anticipate that we will be in masks? That has come up in camp phone calls as well as, school conversations?
What I understand is that we will be masked until we reach herd immunity, either through natural infection by getting COVID or vaccination. And I think they were saying 65 to 70% of our population would have to be at herd immunity. With recent projections, I think they were saying fall with the delayed vaccine rollout. I don't know where that kind of leaves us. But that is my anticipation. Great question.
Do you know how herd immunity is determined? How do they know when they get to that magic number?
A lot of times and that's what they were doing at the very beginning of the pandemic when they were doing mass studies on people with antibody levels. So they were going and checking at the community sites to figure out if people have actually had antibodies to COVID. So that's kind of how they're monitoring it. Now, what we don't know about antibodies is that they do wax and wane and they change. So how long does a COVID antibody actually stay positive? If you've had COVID, are there different types of immune cells we need to be looking at? All of that's kind of part of the process. But my understanding is we've got to get to around 70% to get to herd immunity.
A question here. Oh, go ahead.
Sorry, Melissa. Will they consider the number of people who are vaccinated in the determination of herd immunity? Like, I assume if 60-70% of the population is vaccinated, will that also help determine that?
So herd immunity includes natural immunity through infection, so people who've actually gotten COVID, and includes vaccine related immunity. So okay. Two numbers combined kind of go into the determination about herd immunity. And something I don't know and I think about frequently is by the time we reach herd immunity, what will happen with children? Will they even have started vaccine trials in children at that point? Where will they stand? I don't know. That's one of the thoughts in my head as a pediatrician is, are we going to have herd immunity and the kids aren't going to even need to be vaccinated, or where will we be in trials? And I haven't read anything that kind of gives me an answer to that question. But I would expect through camp, and we're talking about camp right now, your children are going to be masked and distanced and unlikely to be vaccinated.
And to that point, we're kind of in the same boat like Chris with the masks, and our plan right now, and I think through the summer will be businesses as it was in 2020. But one of my questions is what can change as we look at 2021? What do we know differently that we didn't know last summer that we know today? And as we think about operations, obviously masks, distance is still a thing, but field trips and buses, are those things that could be approved and safe, or are we still saying that going off site or bringing people onto site? I know that obviously that increases exposure, but from an ACA perspective and a medical perspective, do you feel that really keeping our operations the same as they were in 2020 makes the most sense, or do we have a little leeway in how we think about off-campus buses and things like that?
So off-campus, I need to think about. Nobody's doing field trips right now, so there's no data about field trips and their safety. So that's something I anticipate people asking us, especially as far as schools go for next year, about what do we think about getting kids off-site. Two things I think have changed. Number one is quarantine strictness has definitely starting to become a little bit more flexible. So instead of a straight off the board 14 days, there's now shortened quarantine options. So that's a major change. And the other change is that there's less focus, and I'm not saying it's not important, and I'm not saying we shouldn't do it, but there's less focus on touch points and children touching things and getting COVID. And there's more emphasis on the importance of masking and distancing, because we know this is a respiratory transmission virus and you're a lot less likely to get it through touching. So I've started to see libraries within schools open. I've started to see more book sharing and object sharing as we learn more about COVID. So I do think operationally, you might see some differences in terms of how strict we have to be about the touch points. Now, kids, of course, have to wash their hands, and that's best done when they're reminded and on a schedule, or certain times of the day they need to be washing, of course, but that's one emphasis I do see is likely changing.
That should make a nice difference. That should make a good difference for camps, you
Mm.
know, and how they can, what they can offer, for sure.
Right. I think there's going to be a lot less fear about children touching things. And that'll help.
And we're hearing that on a national basis too, that people took, you know, Herculean efforts to clean. And that I think they will still continue some of those cleanliness habits going forward, probably forever, because camps reported this summer they had their healthiest summers ever. So your typical things that you see in the summer at camp, everyone gets the cold, everyone gets a gastrointestinal something. We just didn't see those this summer. And so there really is a correlation between that hand washing, the sanitizing, and all those other things. But I think the general hand washing that has been increased has made a huge difference, and that's going to be taking place going forward.
Yeah, I think continuing to wipe down surfaces like we were and washing hands, I think it's a good general practice in general. It's not kind of nice to have that justification at this point, not that we want anybody to get sick, but it would, I mean, it really is better in general. In childcare, the standards are higher. So in camp, it's a good idea as well.
Right. So gone are the days of people spraying down their Amazon boxes. That's not how people are getting COVID. And my mom still does it, but you know, most people are not.
Does that mean also gone are the days, hopefully, that we're sanitizing balls, you know, in between uses, or like equipment, that playground equipment that after one group goes, we got to go and wipe down all the equipment? Do you think that is?
I think that's coming quickly. I think what's going to end up happening is we're going to sanitize things on a routine basis. We're not going to be hyper vigilant about pods. And kids most likely are going to have to sanitize their hands before they get on the playground and sanitize on their way out. And then that's going to kind of be, we're going to move on. But they're not getting COVID from the playground. Now, if they're up in Johnny's space at the playground and they're not masked and they're sneezing in each other's space, yeah, they can get COVID, but they're not getting it from going down the slide.
Dr. Peterson, you talked briefly about the I guess vaccine through infection, having had COVID. So how likely is it once you've had COVID, will you just get it again, or are you immune? And this goes with like Sherry Hansen's question in the chat, you know, regarding herd immunity. You keep the antibodies for about 3 months. Like, is that correct? Or just in general, how likely is it for you to get COVID again once you've had it?
It's fairly unlikely, although it's happened and it's happening. And there's a question about when there's new viral strains going around, is that part of a process where you can get COVID twice? I don't know the exact rate of how often you can get COVID twice, but I know it's for sure happening. They're also studying if you've been vaccinated, and they say vaccines are up to 95% effective at preventing severe forms of COVID, meaning the types of COVID where you could be hospitalized or requiring oxygen. So they're very good at preventing the severe infections. But what is the rate of somebody who's vaccinated getting COVID, not knowing they have COVID because they're vaccinated and they feel fine, and then spreading it to the community? Which is why at this point, you're still seeing people wear masks. You're still seeing people that are distancing that have had both vaccines, because we just don't know yet. So good questions. I don't have the ideal answer at this point. Sorry, I have not been paying attention to the chat. That's my fault. But yes, once you've had COVID, you do not need to quarantine for 90 days after that infection. But again, once your 90 days is over, they're still recommending repeat quarantine if you've been exposed.
Great.
I have a question for Gay. Is there a timeline for when new guidelines are going to be coming out for camps, day camps, sleepaway camps?
So, Ellen, if you'll put the field guide link in there in the chat. So the field guide that ACA put together with the Association of Camp Nurses and a consulting group is a living document. And as soon as information is updated, it is updated in that field guide. There is some new information coming to that soon about vaccines and how that will impact camping this summer. And so it really, there's just ongoing information all the time being updated in there. And I know that there are some hopefully good insight into working with special populations coming for the field guide as well. There's really not been much information from the CDC come out about dealing with special populations, and we know that that's still a very vulnerable population. But just like everyone else, they would like to get out and get back to their routines that they're used to participating in. So we hope that will be coming into the field guide very soon.
Great. Does anybody else have any questions for Dr. Peterson? I know that that way she can sort of keep one eye left on this group while she works on some other stuff. Anyone?
I do. I have a question. As both a parent of two children who are small, are you still seeing the difference between like the neck gaiters and wearing like the full face masks? Like, are we still recommending that the neck gaiters are not as appropriate as the full face masks? Just so that way camp leaders know which one they should kind of more so request their campers to wear?
So the neck gaiters fell out of favor in the fall when they did a study on neck gaiters that were made out of fleece, not athletic material, but it was made out of fleece. And what they found is that if you're wearing a neck gaiter, you are actually more likely to spread COVID, because instead of the big particles that come out of your mouth, when it goes through the fleece, it became all of these microparticles that were easier to inhale. So because of that study, the neck gaiters took a major, thumbs down, because we didn't have data to say that that didn't happen with athletic style neck gaiters. So in general, if you're coming up with mask policies, gaiters at this point are not advisable. For children, really, really important, children model adult behavior. You guys all work with children, you understand this. So if children see adults modeling proper mask behavior, they're more likely to wear the mask. If children hear adults talking about how a mask keeps them healthy and what the role is that it performs, they're more likely to wear their mask. So having your staff model positive behavior with the mask is important. So you need a mask that fits. So a child should not come with a mask for an adult male. So the mask needs to fit, and of course it needs to go over the nose and over the mouth. Their children, I have 3 of them. You remind them constantly, your goal should not be perfection. Your goal should be positive reinforcement of the behavior. But if you look at schools now, kids are so used to wearing a mask that you're not having a lot of mask resistance. So long answer to a short question, thumbs down on the gaiter.
Thank you.
That's a good explanation though. All right, does anybody else in the group here have anything for Dr. Peterson at this particular moment?
If you think of something, I will be around.
Okay.
Just say my name and I will try to get more involved. So thank you guys for having me. Good luck with your summer camps. My children are attending camps in this panel this summer, so I appreciate the diligence towards our health. So thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. And as she said, she'll be in the background. So if anybody has any other questions. I think that's a lot of really good information that we just got, and hopefully it helped everyone. I would like to, at this point, sort of turn it over to Gay and Melissa chiming in as well, as far as like, best practices, things that they learned last year that will help this year, and any advice given.
Okay. Well, I think one of the things that came out of folks having camp last summer was health starts at home. So you can't just worry about somebody when they show up at camp. We really have to collaborate with our families and our caregivers to monitor people's health at home and make note of those health changes. I think that's super important, whether you're a day camp or a resident camp, is that you're aware of temperature change in particular that can help indicate that there might be a problem or that you're trending that direction. I know the Association of Camp Nurses, which I think, Anne, you have a link to,
Yes.
has some documents that are available to everybody that you can send to your parents and have them keep a record of how their camper is feeling. And before they get to camp, possibly do some screening that can help you keep camp healthy. That doesn't mean we're not going to see COVID at camp. It just means that, you know, we're just adding another layer of the protection lasagna because it's not just one thing that keeps people healthy. It's a whole number of things. And I think also the sort of contactless drop off, the handoff between parents and the facility, I think is super important. I used to take my children by the hand and walk them inside the building and say hello to everybody. I think those days are gone. And camps report that they love the new contactless drop off and pickup. Things are quicker, they're more streamlined, there seems to be less tears. People have, you know, set that expectation with your camper, your child, this is what it's going to look like. And I think that, you know, maybe taking that temp while the child is still in the car, asking those few questions, no temperature recorded at home, sniffles, you know, any of those kind of things. And then, you know, having that handoff is really important. I think a lot of camps will not go back to the bringing the child in kind of thing. I think they'll have that more streamlined drop off and pick up going forward. I think that one of the things that we have heard a lot about from the Association of Camp Nurses, who we partner with a lot, is you must have a good plan if you have a breakout at camp. And if you don't already have that plan, communicable disease plan, you really need to have a good one in place, because that can be the difference between a few cases and a lot of cases. And I know if you're working closely with the health department, that's probably one of those things that they want to see, evidence of what is your communicable disease plan. If you don't already have one, you definitely need to have one this year if you're planning on operating. I think what Melissa said earlier is kind of what we're hearing across the board. Camp this year is kind of probably look very similar to last year as the vaccine becomes more available, at least for our adult workers. That will help, but you know, like Dr. Peterson said, until we have the herd immunity, we're still really going to be masking, sanitizing, you know, participating in social distancing, all those kind of things until the fall or herd immunity. So for the time being, I think we're still going to have the smaller ratios. Hopefully that will open up as the vaccine becomes more available. But I do think we're looking at most camps opening that are able to, and, you know, pretty much keeping the things in place that they've previously done.
I have a question,
last
Gay.
year. Yes.
Do you recommend with camps that, you know, a lot of camps have, you know, historically, just like schools, you break groups out into ages, that sort of thing. But what about siblings? Are you recommending that they be in the same cohort? Or is that something that they don't really, it's not as important this year?
I mean, I think it depends on how easy is that for you to make work. And I think that's a really individual choice. You know, do you want to have a 6-year-old with a group of 10-year-olds? You know, that kind of thing. It has to make sense with your individual program. I've heard both, and I've heard people have success with both. I do think cohorts are super important. I do think if you can minimize the exposure, that helps, minimize the spread throughout your whole facility and population. So I do think cohorts are very important, but who they're populated by, I don't know that we have a lot of data on that.
Right.
I have a
Melissa,
question.
oh, Kelly, you got a question?
Yes. So you talked about having a plan if someone does contract COVID, which was like kept my stress level to right here last summer.
Yes.
We were very fortunate. We didn't have any, knock on wood. We had a couple of people who had been exposed that had to stay home, but we never had any positives in camp for children or staff. But that was my greatest caution and fear. So what is the best recommendation for a plan? I mean, like we never had to implement, we had a plan, but we never had to implement it. And I never felt confident in it because, that's the most frightening thing to me.
Right. So I'm not an expert in that area by any means, but the people at the Association of Camp Nurses are. Next week, they are actually having a workshop before their national conference, which is virtual. There is a cost, but it is probably worth every penny. And I think it's coming up on January the 29th. And I was assured that if you attended that workshop, that you would have a good communicable disease plan after it's over with. They are really going to walk people through that and help you figure out, what the best plan is for you.
Can you send us that link, or would we find it on that?
The link is right there up in the chat.
I just put it right in the chat.
Yep. And I was just on a session with Tracy Gaslin, who's the executive director for the Association of Camp Nurses. And she's their hotline. So if you ever have a question and you call and leave a message, she's the one who calls you back. Don't hesitate to call. If you don't have someone from your agency who's a member of that organization, it's very inexpensive to join. It's about $35. It is well worth it. Tracy has given over 50 Zoom lectures in the last year, and she's on top of everything. She talks about, rapid testing. Should you offer testing at your camp or your facility? The cost involved with those kinds of things. She's helping put the information about vaccines together for the field guide. She is a wealth of information, and she saw the need that people were nervous about putting that communicable disease plan together. And so out of that came this webinar that's going to occur next week. They're fantastic. I'm not a nurse, but I belonged to Association of Camp Nurses for the last 20 years because I wanted to make sure that I, as a camp director, was following the best practices, and then I got that to my nursing staff as well. And that's kind of was my way of keeping abreast of everything new and wonderful. But it is well worth it. If any of you folks are not a member of the American Camp Association and have not ever been a member, it is free to join for a year. And right now, all of the COVID resources, including the field guide, are free to everybody.
That's wonderful.
I hope that's going to continue on for a while. At some point, they might go behind the paywall, but right now we really feel like that's important for everyone to have access to that. And it is getting updated daily as soon as we know of any kind of new developments. We've been working with the CDC and other agencies as well to contribute to that field guide. And yeah, we're really happy that we were able to make a very quick pivot this year and get that out there because people really needed it.
Thank you so much. Melissa, do you have, could you speak to maybe if you have any sort of, what you did last year and the things that worked the best for you?
Absolutely. And I will also echo Gay's sentiment about the ACA. A lot, I showed you earlier my magazines and preparing for this year and operations guides and operating procedures. Gay, I don't know if those magazines are public as well on the ACA website, but to take advantage of that free membership this year for anybody is really so pivotal on so many levels, and so many calls like this that have really lended themselves to great information for all of us as operators. I think as last year, many of the standard operating procedures that we followed, we did share amongst the local camp community. What Gay also said about the parents on site, that probably was one of my major takeaways from directors, was how smooth the summer ran, by keeping it simple and trying to operate in the simplest approach, but also still keeping the meaning of camp and what it is that we hold ourselves true to in our individual missions, is probably my real focus for this year. Is operationally what worked last year. I think if you ran camp, you probably understand it and feel that you know it better this year than you did obviously last year. It was kind of like, learning how to fly an airplane at the same time you're flying it. It just kind of all came together. But, in the sense of things that may look a little differently, one of the things that we learned, because at one of our camps in Alabama, we did have one child case, and that child came from a wrestling camp. Really communicating and talking to your parents and your campers, but trying to get ahead of that, their time on site. Sometimes it's, we're going so quickly, or we're doing other things, especially if you're in a school or another daycare operation. But having that time for a director to call and talk to parents, I think, just to really get a feel of where else they've been, if they've been to another camp program, or if they're planning to be with you all summer, are they taking trips? Not that you can say don't come to camp, you may not feel comfortable doing that, but really just having an understanding of what their summer plans are, what it may look like, what questions they have for you, has really been beneficial, because you really can understand what their social life looks like, and what their other itinerary might be that could affect what your goals are for the summer. And the other thing too, I think, sometimes when I say parents being on site, parents tend to tell us how to run our business, and it's not always, not for them to tell us how to run the operations, but by truly setting standards and communicating them in advance, was something that I think helped us immensely to be able to control our environment, and to control not only what happened on site, but really how we managed our staff and our campers and our groups, and what we felt we could make work for us, to keep our internal operations safe and sound and running smoothly. So if you weren't able to run last summer and you're still trying to think about what's new and the best approach for this year, happy to speak to anybody, individually on that. But run your camp not like a machine, but like a machine, and you have the voice. You set the standards, you communicate. The more communication, I think, from our side, the better. A lot of times we were on call on Monday, and somebody at a camp in Tennessee actually said that last summer we were getting emails from everybody, on their safety standards and what it looked like. And sometimes it's like, okay, I really don't need to hear from Foot Locker about their safety standards, but we did hear from parents that they wanted to hear from us. It involved their children. They knew they needed camp. They were planning to attend. So putting that, document together for both your internal operations and to your outside community, what that looks like, was probably another major takeaway, that over communication is not a bad thing.
Right. I've heard that a lot. I mean, communication and transparency for parents seems to make a huge deal. Also, along those lines, I just completely lost my train of thought because one of those Air Force jets just went by.
Well, I will say that Melissa had a great plan last year. We relied on her a lot in some early calls in the spring, because they had already been doing essential childcare at that time for essential workers. So she had a very early plan that was very nailed down. And one thing that I might encourage you to do is use social media to get that information out, because if you didn't operate last year and you are going to operate this year, things will look different to your campers. To your kids, things might not look exactly like it has in the past. And so the more that you can front load that information to your families, the better off they are. They'll know that mom's not going to walk them into the building, or that dad's not going to come inside and pick them up, or grandma's just going to drive through the drop off and let them go to camp. Anything that you can show them, in a short Instagram post, or a video that you put on your website or send out embedded into an email, is a good way to get that information out.
Right. And that just reminded me of actually what I have been distracted from saying, but along the lines of the communication, the transparency is really important. And schools, I've seen a lot of schools do this. And I know we've got some schools with us right now that, are regular schools, and they operate camps, is that transparency to the parents. When they let parents know, this is, we have 0 cases, or we've had 1 case, or, this is what we've done. So not just letting people know ahead of time what steps you're going to be taking, how you're going to be running your camp differently, but communicating along the way, letting, don't be afraid to let parents know, if you've had a case in camp, if you've had it, if word gets around, they want to know about this, and they'd much rather know what's happened and what you're doing about it.
And talking about staff, Dr. Peterson said that with the older ones, we started last summer and masks weren't a thing. And then probably right after Memorial Day, or that early part when the college kids, had some party, and Dr. Vegna said, okay, it's not just adults anymore, it's this age group. So it was immediate. We need the staff to start wearing masks. And then by July, everybody was wearing masks. So it is a constant change, and knowing that it's going to probably still continue to evolve is something that, through that communication, but also to manage your own stress level, it's just, it is an ever-changing thing, and just be ready to make those internal tweaks to your plans, and know it has to happen, but communicating that to parents, but then your staff too, is just really trying to remain vigilant and knowing where they've been to and what they're up to in their outside worlds, because they, to me, still tend to be the ones that stand out the most of if they're going to go out and party. I was so glad when bars officially closed for the sense of them not going anywhere, but it's really just keeping the lines and the training open with your staff, because I think for this summer too, your staff is going to be pivotal in how your campers feel day to day. Because if you do stay in those smaller cohorts, especially for the ones that are high school and college and not teachers who have been a part of it, that sense of communication and bond and connectedness is really a major player for, I think, everybody this summer. Gay, somebody said it well on your end on a recent call. It was, what the world needs now is camp. And I think that's, that's our kind of mantra for this summer.
I need it. And, I'm a grown up and I don't really even get to go anymore. But just when someone tells you you can't do something, it's just what you want to do. And I guess for kids who've been so cooped up, it's just, it's just a bummer. I am looking at Sherry's question
I was
about
just
how
about to address that.
handle
Yeah.
social media. Give me a second. I'm going to find a link for you guys to a breakout session that our marketing director did. It's all about advertising for the summer, how to do it, where to do it, what to do, all those kind of things. So give me a second and I'll pop that link into that breakout session for you. And I think that will answer a lot of your questions.
I think, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah,
I was going to say to Sherry, to your question also, I mean, as far as social media threats, I mean, it's always out there, right? And it's becoming more immediate. I mean, we've all seen it play out in all different arenas where, somebody can throw something out there and really get people revved up. But I think the one main thing that you can work with that is the transparency. if you let people know ahead of time, this is what you're doing, this is how you're handling it. You let parents know right away if you've had a case or if a counselor or a child, that sort of thing. The more you are transparent and are proactive and share information and let people know what you're doing, the less likely that can happen and the less impact that can have on you. And so that's really, it's just so important. And I know we said we're going to sort of talk about marketing on the back end here, but it sort of speaks a little bit to what Melissa said and Dr. Peterson, what Gay said, but some of the most effective things that you can do on the front end, because marketing is about, bringing in your campers, but it's also about, branding yourself and making sure people know what you're doing and your image. It's really important to make sure that your website is current. And I know that, we've seen in the past that a lot of times, camps can have some camps can have some difficulty with that. It's really important to keep your website current, to let, to have that information on there, not only about what camp's starting, but what you're doing as far as COVID, how you're going to be dealing with that, what your plans are. We work with a lot of schools at Nola Family as well, and we do we shot a lot of video tours and virtual open houses, and one of the things is it's a mix with schools between showing what the reality is today with masking, but then also that's not going to be forever. So also wanting to highlight how they will look in, like, air quote, normal times. But with camps, you do want to show that as well. Like, you do want to update pictures on your website where you show your kids masking. It's not something that you want to hide. It's the reality. And everybody went through it last summer. So we're all in the same boat. And so, show those pictures, share pictures when you do your email marketing, which is, really important. And, again, we can talk to you about, you email to your list, but we've got great lists at Nola Family for, local parenting that we can send out for you as well. But, include pictures from last year, from your camp of the kids masked there. Show people, what you're doing, encourage the early enrollment. And if you have, testimonials or reviews from parents from the previous year about how they went to your camp and how comfortable they felt, or how, how their kid really enjoyed it, even in a time of COVID, put those out there on your website as well and in your email marketing, because that's what people want to hear and that's what they want to see. So I don't know if that helped, Sherry, at all.
I'll just chime in here on that. Excellent advice, great resources, guys. We should all really kind of be coming together, I think, as small businesses and as child providers in every way. And so I got some great ideas from you just now as you threw that forward for me. And thank you. I'm taking, crazy notes. I personally have been very afraid to post very much, especially in the very beginning. But now it feels like things are getting a little bit softer. Folks are learning kind of how to manage and what the expectations are on how we work with things and how to be successful with it. And so that's great. I mean, trying to get your customers, I've had so many folks just email us directly, completely on their own accord, to tell us thank you, because we are a cooking facility. So folks tend to go, ew, virus and kids and cooking. And we go, you know what? All of those lovely standards that were put forward back in the very beginning of 25% occupancy and washing hands and sanitizing and all this, are like, yeah, we kind of already do all of that right now and have done that for 9 years. It was an easy transition for us. But transparency is key. That is what we have always done primarily. And also vet your blog sites, vet the local groups before, a little bit of something to throw out to the rest of you guys, before you start posting and doing any marketing. On this mama blog, you can post on Mondays and advertise. You might want to read a good bit on those blogs and such before you begin posting, because you will get a sense of the attitude of the type of followers that are there, and go read about how they've responded to other ads and to other things before you put your neck out on that. So we've been good so far. We haven't had too many horrible things happen at this point, but I've been very conservative about that, just for that fear, because a couple of things can spiral pretty hard and we don't need that extra hassle when you're trying to do.
And that's a really good point. I mean, social media is big, email marketing, that sort of thing. but that can be a problem when you work with blog sites, is you can't control the message. And part of their traction and part of their past appeal to people is that is drama, and sort of creating that, and that's just an unfortunate natural part of how those sort of things work. So I would definitely be careful of that, and be in front of your message, not behind it. Do we have anybody else have any questions that they would like to sort of, because this is an open forum and discussion, hopefully a chance for all of you to, talk to each other, learn things, anything that you've done that you did last year that was particularly effective, or anything that you had problems with that you'd like advice from other camp directors. I mean, this is a great time for that.
Yeah, Dr.
Actually, I have something. We at the JCC, we didn't offer before care or after care, which we usually do, and we kind of changed our hours to like an 8:30 to 3:30 as opposed to a 9 to 3. And I was just wondering if other camps have had success with before care and after care, and what you did, and to make it successful.
I can speak to that. I mean, I think that's a very valid question, Wendy, because I know it was across the board, and nobody, even schools now, before care and after care looks really different. We did keep our standard hours of the 7A to 6P, but the activities during those times look different. So where you may not be able to keep the kids in their true cohorts, we did try to maintain distancing and more individual activities. So it wasn't group games, or sometimes where they were able to, get into their individual groups and do whatever they want type of thing. It was a very structured time during the day. So they weren't necessarily in their cohorts, but they did have their space and their own activity centers, more movies, quiet time, things like that.
So did you keep the kids who stayed the entire day in one group, or you didn't, or they were mixed in?
We did not. They had their groups during the day. Last year, and I think it probably will be very same this year, aftercare was, I'd say, 75% less than what we typically see, just because so many parents were working from home. It'll be interesting for this year, but no, we did let them go into their age groups and their individual groups during the day, and then for aftercare, just no.
And, Melissa, what we did was, before, we tended to put them in their rooms sooner and leave them in their rooms a little longer than we normally would have. But then when they did come to a common area, we were fortunate to have tables. So we assigned a table per group. So they still stayed with their group until the ratios got so low. And then they just, well, even then they pretty much stayed at their table. And then that way we didn't have the cross contamination.
That's good. Dr. Peterson, you've seen it looks like you've answering the questions. Okay, yeah, I can see you.
To type them, I can talk faster. So the Department of Education, when school started, recommended masking for anybody 3rd grade and above. And the CDC has consistently recommended masking for children 2 and above. This does not apply to anybody that has special medical needs, where they are not able to remove the mask from their face. So remember, if there's a child that really needs max medical assistance, the masking does not apply. Most schools are masking from pre-K and up. 3-year-olds can do it, but maybe 50-50 if you're lucky. But if you have 4-year-olds and older in your camps, I would promote masking for those age ranges. The other question was as far as COVID and stomach acid. Typically close contact means you're within 6 feet for somebody for 15 minutes or more. But if you drink after somebody who has COVID, that is considered a close contact. So the 15-minute rule is out, the 6 feet rule is out. If somebody shares a Gatorade, that's considered close contact. So regardless of the stomach acid, it's a close enough exposure to get that child quarantined.
So not eating or drinking after, but just even food preparation, because I know there were so many concerns and so rigid about that. What are I just even know, like, I was at a birthday party and like, oh, we can't blow out candles because we can't, we can't eat this cake if we did that. And I'm just trying to know where are the, because I had understood that was only through breathing in.
Right. I think just in general though, but if the child is unmasked and is blowing out candles, that's a forceful blow. And just like musical instruments, we're really trying to limit the amount of like forced exhalation. So blowing out
I was
candles,
just using that as an example. I didn't
right.
mean
And I'm
we would
just kind
do
of
that.
extrapolating off of it, but really the guidance for food preparation has not changed a ton. May it by summer possibly, but if a child is getting served something, you do want it to be in individual portions. If they're sharing king cakes or cupcakes, make sure they are individual instead of somebody having to like touch them and breathe on them and spread them out. Do I think that's the main way people are getting COVID? No. Have the guidelines changed as far as food preparation? No. So we're kind of stuck with what we have. And that's the continued guidance for schools and cafeteria food preparation.
I think that's pretty standard for even pre-COVID.
Right. I mean, the king cake thing is now changed. So kids have to individually baggy king cake slices instead of having the teacher cut them. So if that's applicable for camp, just try to keep it individually portioned.
I have a question. Last summer, I remember when a kid will have any kind of symptom that it was related to COVID, we will have to call the parents and ask them to pick them up within the hour, pretty much. And isolate the kid, put them in a special room that we had dedicated for that, disinfect the whole area where the kid has been playing, and follow all those rules. Do you think that this is something that we will have to follow up this summer too? Like for the third symptom that the kids have, call the parents and pick them up within the hour.
So I do anticipate that happening throughout the summer, and that's going to be, it's broken down a little bit more clearly by Department of Health and now as opposed to when summer hit in terms of major criteria and minor criteria that would cause somebody to be eliminated from a school setting. So, minor criteria could be like runny nose and congestion, and that would be 2 symptoms. And then if you had 2 symptoms, that would be a school or camp exclusion, whereas a major criteria would be something like new, unrelenting cough. So then that child would have to be removed. But there's definitely more guidance in terms of symptom strategy. But yes, if you have a sick child that's having new symptoms in a school or camp, they have to be isolated. And there's all these rules in terms of when they can come back, what kind of COVID test they have to have. It goes on, but those rules will likely be followed through the summer.
Last year, they put out a special thing for summer camps rules. Do you think they will do that again proceeding?
They likely will. And unless there's a major change during the school year, I expect camps to kind of mirror the symptom criteria for major and minor.
Is there a way for us to get a copy of what they're doing for education at this point?
Yeah, I can, I'll find it and post it in the chat.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm. It's long and detailed, so unless you're doing this every day, there's a learning curve for sure.
I have a bit of local news for you guys. So the ACA National Conference is virtual this year, but we were supposed to be in New Orleans. So that's actually been postponed, but we will be there in 24. So we're always looking for local flavor, local volunteers. There's a lot of ways to participate and be hospitable. So we'll keep you in the loop about that, but we'll be down at the Hilton in 2024.
That's
yeah,
great.
I'm
The agenda for that is officially out, and it's the first week of February, as Gay said. So it definitely is worth taking a look at and registering. There is a cost to register, but it's minimal and without travel fees. I think it's worth taking a look at some of the sessions that you may want to be a part of, because I know even some of the smaller regional ones, they've been really great discussions and really educational.
Mm-hmm. It'll never be cheaper to go.
Does anybody have anything else they'd like to contribute?
I do have one more question that came up for me just recently when you were talking about the symptoms. Do you have any recommendations for how to handle children in inclusive settings? So some children that might have some sensorial issues that really struggle with being masked, or have different reactions in situations that would deem it unsafe for other children. I like what you said earlier about the child to child. That kind of helps me breathe a little bit easier. But when you see children interacting that just whether it's body awareness or sensorial that struggle with keeping these new norms, regular norms, like in normal times, and then in this situation it's heightened, and just because of where they are on the continuum, say, have a challenge in that situation, or without excluding these children, how can we support them and keep everybody safe?
So what you need to remember is that they're currently doing this in special education classrooms. So children that have sensory issues have not been excluded from school this year, unless for parental reasons they decided to keep them home. And I think kind of the best mentality is to make sure the staff that are around them are diligent with mask and distancing, and you do the best you can. But a lot of children are having a difficult time with masks, especially if they have sensory issues. And I think constantly reminding them and trying to get better compliance is a goal, but perfection should not be your goal. But you do have to be relatively diligent about their symptoms. So if they are sick, they go home because they're not able to mask and distance. And the other thing with children that have special needs, because they can't mask and distance reliably, they're not a candidate for a shortened quarantine. So I kind of alluded to in the beginning about 7-day options and 10-day options. If you're bringing a kid back that can't mask and can't distance, they should not be a candidate for a shortened quarantine. So that's just another fine point to remember. But I don't think children with special needs, medical or emotional, social, should be excluded from a camp setting, because that's also a part of therapy for them.
And if I could, a few things to share for you guys. I was just taking a couple of notes on those points regarding the special education students and those with sensory. Up here at Culinary Kids, that was our first class when we first opened 9 years ago, was to be able to provide programming for people with varied abilities. And something that I have noticed this year, we were sort of afraid to bring back our all ability programming because of this reason, the sensory issues, the keeping the masks on and such. But what we did actively notice was that our parents were phenomenal. Again, with the communication with your parents, they will help you. If you're having some trouble with a particular child, please reach out to those parents and say, what do you use at home? What tricks and such? We send out an exceptionality report for parents and children to fill out whenever they come into our programming, whether they're integrated into our typical program or in the specific all ability program. We have a 4-page form that they fill out so that we can get to know that child very well and really arm our staff. Some of them are trained paraprofessionals, but most of them are not. And so that information and communication with parents is the complete bridge that you need to help that child learn and grow and practice well. And the parents truly, truly appreciate having that interest. The other point that I made a note on that came up was folks were asking about aftercare solutions. Someone was asking from one of the centers about how to help with your aftercare. One of the things that I've noticed is that kids are being placed into pods and not necessarily isolating, but being distanced and separated quite a bit. In doing so, these individual type of activities can be a bit challenging for us to keep up with, and the kids do start to feel a bit lonely at times and they want to interact. We actually made an exception to our standard rule this year for the first time, where we're actually permitting, and we speak it with the parents and ask their permissions for certain hours of the aftercare timeframe. We do allow the kids to bring their own personal devices. Eeks! Oh my gosh, I said it out loud. It's kind of contrary to the Montessori style of learning that we normally do. However, with some of these devices becoming integrated with other people socially, we ask permission with parents and only offer it for certain periods of time to give the kids a bit of a break from their personal isolations a bit, to interact with some of their friends online, a touch with supervision. So they're brief, but it does tend to break it up a bit. And the third thing, sorry, but I did make the note, to break from that distancing and that isolation kind of feel that we felt, we did get a lot of folks this year for summer camp in 2020 reaching out to us because we have a tremendous amount of outreach capability. We are able to send people out from our camp and our educational facility to other camps and other educational facilities to kind of shift the burden of attention. So when we're in a group with a particular camp, it's nice to give a fresh face and a little bit of a different activity led, and it reduces the exposure because we would only send 2 staff members off site to go enhance another place's curriculum. So masked and distanced was fairly easy, and it just adds a fresh face and a bit of dynamic. So enhancement by partnering together was also a real benefit for us. So if you have camps near you, everybody should, try to join together a bit and share that love and that support. So that was very successful for us this year, just in case you guys sparks any ideas for you locally in your area.
Great. I know there's been a couple of questions about theater camps.
I don't think there's any specific guidance for theater camps. I think really the best practice is to look at the guidance, and you just have to adapt it for your particular situation, because really you're all making decisions based on your particular program. There's not a one size fits all. I think you just have to modify it in a way that makes sense for your ability to do business in the safest way possible. Not looking for 100% perfection, as Dr. Peterson said, but doing the best that you can in the situation and the circumstances that are unique to you.
And I guess my question with it, sorry, I'm in my office and people are in and out. My question with the theater camps in particular, ours are typically musicals. And so I know that there has been some guidance with singing. And then obviously, with the theater production, the distancing is more challenging. But specifically with regard to the singing, have the guidelines changed at all with singing?
I don't think so, because
no, unfortunately not.
Yeah. There were definitely some camps that had some high incidences of COVID last year, and not all of them, but a large majority of them were camps that were not masked and singing in large groups that were not socially distant. So it's unfortunate, but we all, having spent many years in musical theater myself, there's a lot of that. I'm not sure there's a whole lot you can do about that.
Thank you for the information. I appreciate it.
We were able to do one session of our MAD camp last summer. The first session was at the beginning of the summer. We canceled that one just because things were too raw and too fresh. But our second session of MAD camp with quite a few adaptations was very successful, and we had no incidents at all. But our kids did wear masks during the day, and for their performance, they wore the screens on their faces, and we kept the group static during the day, no crossing over in the hallways, separate lunches, and we had them eating behind plexiglass guards across from one another. So I think that it can be done. There's a lot of, for us, it was rethinking every possible thing that we do during the procedures of our MAD camp. But it was possible, and we were able to do it. It's just, you can't do it the same way that we've done it in the past. I was just curious as to whether there was any new guidance out for this summer. Obviously we had to cancel the first session because everybody was just so afraid. But we'd like to continue to do our 2 sessions this summer if possible. So, so I'd be curious to see what the State Department, the CDC, if they come out with anything for camps this summer as well.
They likely will. I mean, they did last summer, and they did specific guidance for camps and daycares and schools and all the different groupings. They very much mirror each other. So the bottom line guidance is the same. They just kind of tailor it to the audience, but I would expect a CDC update for sure. And LDH will do something very similar.
And the same for ACA in the field guide. Go to that COVID link that's at the top of the ACA main page, and that will take you right to there. And anytime there's a CDC update, it then gets updated in that field guide.
I think there was a person from Breck on here. Is that person still on here?
I don't know. I know there was somebody from Breck and Baton Rouge.
Sarah?
Sorry, that's me.
Had two people. There you go. I was going to say most people are still here.
Is it okay if I ask? Sorry, I know that most of y'all aren't from Baton Rouge, but since I have her handy, I'm just wondering what the status of Breck playgrounds are. Are they open now to the general public? Other facilities? Is Breck? I know Breck did virtual only last year. Are they planning to have?
No, we actually did in-person camps. We did have some virtual sessions, but we also had in-person sessions throughout the summer. I think the first 2 weeks were virtual, and then after that we started doing in-person sessions, but we limited the number of facilities as well as the number of campers that were allowed. And the number of campers allowed were dependent on the facility and how many kids that we could, because we kind of did the pods and had kids in different rooms. So as of right now, we're planning to do the in-person camps again. Probably more facilities, but most likely sticking with that same limited number of actual campers at each facility. That's about as far as we've gotten into like actual planning, is we're really just looking at being able to like what we can staff and how we would be able to make that work.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
I like your dog.
Thanks.
Does anybody have anything else? Any other questions or anything that they'd like to share? I mean, I know we're coming up on 11:30, so I think that this has gone really well for everybody. I think it's been very helpful. Thank you so much, Dr. Peterson, for being a part of this. I think you've answered a lot of questions and given a lot of great information. And to Melissa Connor and Gay Bruner also, thank you so much. I think Melissa has mentioned that we could probably do a regroup in a few weeks and maybe bring everybody together again, especially as it gets closer to camp time and with whatever changes have been going on. So we can send information out about that. And we'll be following up with everybody as well. A reminder that we have recorded this session. So we'll send out an email with all the links that have been shared with us during this session to all of you. And if you want a copy recording of that, or somebody else would like it, just let us know. But thank you so much to everybody for participating in this. It's been so informative, and hopefully it has been for you as well.
Thanks, Sam, for pulling it together. And thanks, Gay, for being a part of it too. And Dr.
My
Peterson.
pleasure. Thank y'all.
Okay, and thank you. Yeah, just a reminder also that Gay had mentioned the ACA has a 1-year free membership, and there's so much. And I think also you said the the Camp Nurse Association is what, $35 a year?
Yes, it's not expensive.
So much.
No.
I mean, so many great resources are available to everybody. So thank you again. So thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye, guys.